Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Something a bit different this evening, and it's lovely to see you both joining us in for the first time and those who are coming back again for another weekly instalment. I love doing these little impromptu sessions with you on Sunday evenings and hope you enjoy them too. So if you've got suggestions for future topics, do let me know. And the subject for tonight came from a question from last week. So here's to you and yours. Stay well, stay healthy. Cheers. Each week, what I've been doing is a different topic around cocktail culture and the martini. And this week, so we've obviously got the dirty martini and shaken and vermouth ratios and the Gibson and olives and all the vermouths and all the important things. But believe it or not, you can't just live by these alone. Trust me, I've tried. So I have a golden rule, believe it or not, when it comes to martinis and cocktails in general. I always eat with my cocktail. Doesn't sound like a big rule, but it's surprising how you can be caught out, because these bad boys, they're potent and they've got a reputation for a reason. And the last thing you don't want to be with a martini is unclassy. The whole point of having these is to be elegant, tasteful, sophisticated. So when you think of what makes a good cocktail hour, it's going to be the ambience, the music in the background, the company, the quality of the drinks, and yes, what you're eating. So I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about some of the things I like to have matching martini and what you might think about when you're composing your next cocktail party. But I never, ever, ever, ever drink on an empty stomach. And again, that doesn't sound like anything other than common sense, but you'd be surprised how you can caught out. There are times when you can have several drinks in a row and you feel perfectly fine, or you just have half a sip and go, woo, off with the fairies, and that's not very desirable either. All it is to keep in mind also that temperature, humidity, like if it's really hot, right now we're moving to Australia's cooler time of year, so it's great cocktail weather because it means your martinis will stay cold and drinks will stay colder for longer. But if it's summer and it's hot and it's humid, then clearly that's going to affect your ability to consume alcohol and the rest of it. So let's just start with a big old glass of water, shall we? Make sure that's always there. And the hotter it is, and the more humid it is, you're going to make sure your ratios are plenty of water, 2 for 1. 2 glasses of water for every drink you're going to have. So again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Phillip Jones, the Martini Whisperer, and tonight I'm talking about combinations of food with your martini. And this came out of a question that came up in last week's Cocktail Hour Live. So personal favourite, so if I can do here, beautiful oysters. I think this is one of the all-time great combinations. Nice dry, or even a dirty martini, and some beautiful these from our south coast. Just natural, some lemon juice, and if you're wondering what another use for your cocktail picks might be, these work really well instead of having an oyster fork. So I'll be having these a bit later after I've signed off with another cocktail. So oysters, natural, or however you like them, because what is really going on when you think about it? I mean, if you've got a dry martini, even a dirty martini, you want some food that's going to complement but not dominate. So all these suggestions I'm going to put to you are basically foods that kind of match but don't take out the taste of your drink. In the same way, if you have wine with food, then the intensity of wine should be harmonised with the food. So basically when you're eating, say, fish or a steak or something, and you have a sip of wine, it's cleansing the palate ready for the next bite for the tannins or the acids in the wine and so forth. Not dissimilar idea of a cocktail. So if I have a sip of my martini, please. That really is rather good. In case you're wondering, Plymouth gin, Dollond vermouth, probably about 5 mils of Dollond to about 70 mils of Plymouth, a couple of drops of Phillip Brothers orange bitters. Happy place. So yes, so if you're drinking your martini, in this case it's quite a dry one, the oysters in this case are going to give very light, fresh flavours, and the martini is going to cut through the sort of beautiful oysters. So they should just marry beautifully well together. So oysters, they're great. But what if you don't like oysters? You might think about the other rule for cocktail nibbles is it has to be kind of one-handed. You can't be holding that, especially if you're at a stand-up party, for example, and then navigating chopsticks and goodness knows what else. So whatever you put in front of people, or like I like to do when I'm preparing my cocktails in the evening, is have little bite-sized pieces. So I might have some chunks of Reggiano Parmigiano cheese, beautiful, that Northern Italian cheese. that's nice, sharp, sets up my palate before I get going. Plain water crackers and so forth. The other thing you may want to think about is, goes really well, one of the best combinations I ever have is rare roast beef. So we've got some roast beef here, voila. And on your crackers, and pretty plain ones, don't go for the flavoursome ones, the exotic flavours, just go for as plain as you possibly can. And with some horseradish and some rare roast beef, or even some blue cheese and some rare roast beef on a cracker, or some dried crostini. Again, they have to be bite-sized. You don't want to be chewing away and then navigating your drink at the same time. Figure the practicality behind this. So you want to be conversing with your friends and not getting stuff stuck in your tongue. So yes, rare roast beef, horseradish, or even blue cheese on a crostini or a really neutral cracker works a treat. The combinations of the protein and the spirit work beautifully together. Another favourite is goat's cheese. Again, I'm thinking nice savoury flavours that are still pretty clean, that are then cut through as you sip your way down your cocktail. Speaking of which, cheers. So again, what I'm doing this evening, folks, is answering a question from last week. We're just talking about some of the things that go great with martinis and other cocktails in general. So if you've got some suggestions of what you like to eat with your cocktails, fire away, and I'd love to see your comments as we go along. So this is beautiful. This is organic goat's cheese near the Victorian border, and it's made by a company called The Peaks. If you're a Canberra person, you go to the market. So this is from our mountain alpine region south of Canberra here. Exquisite small batch goat's cheese, creamy but still bitey, but not too salty. And then that, small doses with a plain cracker, or again some nice French bread, small cut, nice and fresh, is a fantastic combination. We touched on oysters, caviar, another great combo. Again, think about the practicality. So, you may want to have them all pre-positioned, the little bite-sized num-nums with, some goat's cheese and some caviar on top, or roe, salmon roe, it's beautiful. And that works a treat as well. Speaking of which, smoked salmon. And good evening, Jenny Barrett. Thanks for tuning in. I've running about a few minutes flashing me late. I had other engagement, so we just managed to, apologies for being a few minutes late this evening. Smoked salmon. This is from our very famous Piego Estate smokehouse. Cheers. So good. That with this, again, what you're looking for is a balance of flavours. One does not dump the other. The same way as I was saying before, where food and wine kind of come together, and one cuts through. So every time you're tasting one, it's refreshing up your palate each time. So yes, smoked salmon is a really great combo. Again, I cut them up, put in little bread-sized pieces, bite-sized pieces, and then you can just sort of bite away as you go. So you clearly want a bit of a lining, a few bites before you get going, then sip your drink, and basically just alternating as you go. What don't you want? What you don't want is big things that are going to take a fair bit of chewing and knife and fork and make a mess in general. Especially if you're standing up, it's a bit tricky, trying to navigate all those things. Where you're going to put your drink, where you're going to put hands, all that kind of rigmarole. Kebabby things, never a good look anyway. Things that are going to make your hand greasy, because what happens if a greasy paw and a stem, I've seen that happen, that's not pretty. So yes, little bits, bite size, clean, fresh flavours. Walnuts. Walnuts are great. Nice creaminess. Really good with dirty martinis, or if you're going to be adventurous sometime. If you had an espresso martini, if you're reading, you could go a bit crazy and go for things like caramels, dark chocolates, and things of that kind of, but almonds, that kind of end of the spectrum. So you're going for much more that kind of malty cheers, everyone. So we're just chatting about this evening about different food combinations that go great with martinis, in case you missed it. And if you can't stick around for the whole thing, don't worry, it's recorded and it will go on my YouTube channel each Wednesday night. So again, oysters are great, and it doesn't really matter so much what you put on them, as long as it's not too potent. So oysters called Patrick or things like that, probably not, but that's okay. So cool, but oysters are great. Smoked salmon, like I said, goat's cheese, blue cheese. Blue cheese is fantastic. I know some of you don't always eat it. Don't ruin the flow of your show. Keen to hear your thoughts on dessert on some martini. See what I can do. We'll get to dessert martinis in today, don't worry. So yes, where was I? Lost my train of thought after all that. Thoughts on dessert options with a martini. There was a school of thought that says basically a martini, a classic one anyway, is a pre-dinner drink, an aperitif. Frank Sinatra tells a joke about Dean Martin, who was notoriously, apparently, a big drinker. He wasn't really, but he made out to be a big drinker. And he said, Dean never drinks after dinner. But you don't eat till 3 o'clock in the morning, but you never drink after dinner. So if you're talking about martini, like one of those, like I said, an espresso martini that washes up, so to speak, in dessert, or even those kind of, dare I say it, the lychee ones and the apportinis and all the rest of it, you're going to be wanting things that are, in that case, contrasting. You don't want to add sugar upon sugar. You want things like, let's have a think now, butterscotches, bitter chocolates, caramel with salt, for example. You may think about a cheese, like a bitter cheese, like a really smoky washed rind cheese. That could be interesting. But that's in the case of a dirty martini. So if you have a dirty martini, then you've got richer flavours to compete with. So then you could think of anchovies on bread, or even your melted toasties, for example. So in the dessert context, that's a lot more challenging, I must say, but I would seriously think about caramels and chocolates, but quite sharp and savoury flavours, not sweet flavours, because you've got enough going on as it is in your martini. So I hope that answers your question, DK. Cheers. What else can you eat? Main course. So touched on aperitif style with like little hody-hum, little bite-sized pieces. You can go adventure some at the other end of the evening with things like caramels and chocolates, as I was saying. But can you have a martini with a main course? Well, of course you can. And but the classic combination for me is steak and a martini, because then you've got fantastic proteins, the richness of the steak. It just looks good, let's be frank. Lobster, potentially, if you're on the raggedy edge. You've seen those episodes of Mad Men where they've had too many martinis at lunch. You know that's not going to ever end well. So yes, you want, I think steak and Gibson martini, which we touched on the other week, whereupon, got the cocktail onion as the garnish, big savoury flavours that will just cut through a steak beautifully as time goes on. And it's a bit more forgiving too. Dirty martini, also great over a main course, because it's not so critical that it gets warmer, so to speak. If it gets a bit, it doesn't stay as crisp as, say, this dry martini, the way I prefer it, needs to stay after about 15-20 minutes. With a dirty martini, it doesn't matter so much. So in that way, it's much more forgiving if you're eating one over dinner. I probably wouldn't go with pasta. This doesn't seem to be right. So I stick around the protein kind of end of the spectrum. Fish, again, not so much. Again, it's a matter of preference. Of course you can, if that's where you want to go. So friends, if you're just joining us, we're talking about foods and nibbles to go with your martinis as a result of a question that came in last week in our last Cocktail Hour Live. So oysters, again, classic for dry martinis up front. Rare roast beef with horseradish or blue cheese on little biscuits goes down a treat. Smoked salmon, always a great one. Sushi, probably not. Sashimi, passably, yes. That could work beautifully well. Chin. Because again, the fat that comes through from the smokiness is cut through beautifully, and this acts as a palate cleanser as you go along. So yes, I understand sashimi would work great with a martini, definitely true. If you've got a suggestion of what you like to enjoy, I'd love to hear it. Cheers. Because when I do that's the smoked salmon from our local Piagua steak, for example. I get that really lovely, subtle, smoky hit at the back, so nice, adds complexity. And the other thing you need to think about too is, again, coming back to the basic ingredients of your martini. So again, this is a Plymouth gin with D'Ollon, so it's super crisp and super clean, very elegant, just the way I like it. But if you've got a more adventuresome gin or a higher ratio of vermouth, as we shot on the previous chats, then that changes the profile completely. So what you're going to get is a richer, more savoury drink probably. Or if the gin itself or the vodka has a big flavour profile, then that might give you a bit, it might stand there for richer flavours of what you eat. But the rules of thumb is just the same pretty much. You want bite-sized pieces. You don't want to be mucking around with utensils and chewing away things. It has to be down the hatch, not greasy, so you're not getting grubby paw marks over your drink as you go along. And proteins, things like goat's cheeses, blue cheese, even Reggio Parmigiano up front. Smoked salmon, like I said, oysters, sashimi, all great combinations for a classic or a dirty martini. And at the other end of the spectrum, if you're looking at espresso martini overnight, then you do things like dark chocolates, caramel, salt, even raspberries and things like that. So it kind of rounds out the dessert kind of end of the spectrum. So there you are, 20 minutes or so of just chin wagging, talking about booze. As always, again, really appreciate you guys for tuning in. What I do each week, if you're just new to this, is I have a different topic each week. Talk about different facets of the martini. So I've just been chin-wagging tonight about different food to go with the martini, like beautiful oysters from the south coast here, which I'm going to enjoy in a minute with my nice dry martini. But also things like the Gibson martini, a dirty martini, vermouths, and so forth. So if you've got a suggestion for next week, by all means. And of course, all these live on my YouTube channel as well. Along with, I don't know, I think I've got another 30 or episodes of various things and quick reviews of other craft spirits, like you see behind me here. That in the pipeline, just by the way, since you're all here, what's coming up very soon is World Gin Day. I'm sure you're all aware of that. I'll be collaborating with an Australian distiller, Australia's only organic distiller, called Antipodes Gin. So they've asked me to talk about their range, and I'll be introducing that on the evening of World Gin Day with a few prizes in the mix. So stay tuned for details for that. That'll be on our Facebook page, my Facebook page, by the way, not here on Instagram, but I'll let you know where and when that's going to be in the evening of World Gin Day. And the week after is World Martini Day, which is a bit like Christmas for me. And what's going to happen there is simply that I'm partnering with my friends from Gin Tonica, who do a gin subscription service and published a fantastic book on Australian gin and all sorts of things. And what's going to happen there is we're going to have a competition. And you'll be able to enter, again, via my Facebook page, or you can DM me here on Instagram. Again, I'll post this during the week so you know all the details of your very own martini photo. One, a photo you've taken. It could be a martini made by someone else, or one you've made yourself. And a little line that says why that martini is so special. And that's going to go in the mix. And there will be prizes to win, both from Gin Tonica. They're releasing a new martini set, which will be sent off. And we'll have a few of those to give away. Plus a virtual martini masterclass with yours truly, somewhere in the world. So that's going to be really fun. So those entries will go in, when is it? It's Saturday week or something like that. It's going to be a couple of weeks' time. And we'll do a cocktails at live, bunch of prizes to give away, and we'll make the draw and all the rest of it. So it's going to be really, really fun. So World Gin Day is coming up with Antipodes Gin. And then the week after, we've got World Martini Day as well. So I've got the counter ticking around in the background, the Instagram feed, so set a reminder and I'll put a post up to prompt you to send your entries in either DM here or via Facebook as well, and we'll do a draw and there'll be prizes and good stuff, and we'll celebrate the thing we love most, which is these wonderful things and the good times and the great company they bring. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll leave it at that, and if you've got a topic for next week, I'll dream something up, but don't worry. And again, it's been lovely to have you along. Stay well, have a great week, and we'll meet again. Take care. Bye.